Hi, and welcome back to Reddit Terrible Stories. I told my roommate she had to stop using my expensive skincare without asking. When I first moved in with Hannah, I thought we were going to be the perfect roommates. She was friendly, organized, and always up for late night chats about school, work, or relationships. We clicked right away, but it didn't take long for me to notice something strange happening in our shared bathroom. It started small. I'd go to wash my face at night and realize my cleanser bottle felt lighter than it should. My moisturizer pump, which usually lasted me months, suddenly seemed like it was running low. At first, I thought maybe I was just using more than usual, or maybe I hadn't kept track of how full the bottles were when I moved in. But then, one morning, I noticed the lid on my 80 serum was slightly crooked, as if someone had screwed it back on in a hurry. My gut twisted. I hadn't used it the night before. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but Hannah was the only other person with access to our bathroom. She didn't have nearly the same skincare setup I did, just a generic drugstore cleanser and a moisturizer she kept on her side of the shelf. Meanwhile, I had invested in products carefully chosen for my sensitive skin: a high-end cleanser, toner, hydrating serum, retinol cream, and moisturizer. My entire collection probably cost over 500. One day, as I was getting ready for work, I noticed the most glaring evidence yet. My moisturizer pump was sticky, with residue on the side. I always kept my bottles spotless. That's when I realized there was no denying it. Hannah was using my skincare behind my back. I didn't say anything immediately. Part of me wanted to believe it was an accident, that maybe she'd grabbed the wrong bottle once or twice. But the products were depleting faster than I could reasonably explain, and it was becoming impossible to ignore. What frustrated me most was how personal it felt. Skincare wasn't just stuff to me. It was an investment in my health and confidence. I had struggled for years with breakouts, eczema, and allergic reactions. I'd finally found products that worked, and they weren't cheap. The thought of someone dipping into them without asking felt like a violation. I decided I needed proof before confronting her. So, I took a small piece of masking tape and marked the back of my serum bottle with a tiny line, right at the liquid level. If the line moved down significantly within a couple of days, I'd know for sure. Sure enough, 2 days later, the serum had dropped noticeably, far more than I had used. My heart pounded in my chest. It wasn't paranoia. It wasn't an accident. Hannah was helping herself to my expensive skincare, and she hadn't said a word about it. That night, as I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, staring at the almost empty serum bottle, I felt my frustration solidify into resolve. I was going to confront her. I rehearsed what I was going to say in my head for hours. I didn't want to come across as accusatory or dramatic. I just wanted to set a boundary. After all, maybe Hannah didn't realize how expensive my products were. Maybe she thought it was no big deal. Still, I knew if I didn't say something soon, the bottles would keep emptying, and I'd end up spending hundreds more just to replace them. That evening, I waited until Hannah came home from her late class. She dropped her backpack by the couch and flopped down with a sigh. "Long day?" I asked casually, my heart racing even though I tried to act normal. "The worst," she groaned. "My professor piled on 3 assignments due next week. I'm dying." I nodded, then took a deep breath. "Hey, can I bring something up? It's a little awkward, but I feel like I should mention it." Her eyes flicked up, wary. "Uh-oh, what did I do?" she said with a nervous laugh. I forced a smile. "Nothing huge, I just noticed some of my skincare products running out faster than usual, like my serum and moisturizer. And I was wondering if maybe you've been using them?" Her expression froze. For a second, she looked like a kid caught sneaking cookies. Then, she quickly smoothed her face into something casual. "Oh, yeah, I may have used a little. I didn't think you'd mind. I just forgot my moisturizer one day. And then your stuff worked so well, so I figured it was fine." The way she said it, like it was no big deal, made my stomach tighten. "I get it," I said carefully. "But the thing is, those products are really expensive, and they're kind of tailored to my skin. Some of them cost over 80 a bottle, so I'd really appreciate it if you didn't use them. They run out pretty fast, and I can't afford to replace them constantly." She blinked at me like I'd just told her the sky was green. "Wait, seriously? They cost that much?" "Yeah," I said firmly. "It adds up. And also, it's just Personal. I've had bad reactions in the past, so I'm really careful about what I use. Hannah shifted on the couch, suddenly defensive. Okay, I didn't realize, but honestly, I don't think I use that much. Like a pump here and there. Are you sure it wasn't just you? I swallowed my irritation. I marked the bottle. I know it wasn't just me. Her cheeks flushed. Oh, well, I guess I'll stop then. She sounded half apologetic, half annoyed. Thanks, I said simply, hoping that would be the end of it. The conversation left a weird heaviness in the air. Hannah turned back to her phone, scrolling aggressively, as if to signal the discussion was over. I went to my room, trying to shake off the unease. I told myself that was it, that I'd made my boundary clear, and Hannah would respect it. But in the pit of my stomach, I had a sinking feeling. Because the way she looked at me, the way she dismissed the whole thing like I was overreacting, made me wonder if she'd really stop. And I was about to find out sooner than I expected. For a few days, I tried to convince myself everything was fine. I noticed Hannah wasn't lingering in the bathroom as much, and the bottles on my shelf seemed untouched. I thought maybe, just maybe, she had taken my words to heart. But then, one Saturday morning, I went into the bathroom and instantly knew something was off. My moisturizer bottle wasn't in its usual spot on the shelf. It had been shifted to the side, sitting at a slightly different angle. That might sound paranoid, but when you live with someone, you notice small changes. My instincts screamed at me, and when I picked it up, I realized it felt lighter. I twisted off the cap. The product inside was half gone. My chest tightened with a mixture of anger and disbelief. I'd just confronted her. I'd explained everything, the cost, my skin, the principle of it, and she had nodded, promised to stop. Yet here I was, holding proof that she'd gone behind my back again. At first, I didn't want to jump to conclusions. Maybe I'd misjudged how much was left. Maybe I was imagining it. But when I opened the medicine cabinet, I noticed my toner bottle, too. It was wet around the rim, as if it had been opened recently. I hadn't used it since the night before. I clenched my fists, heat rushing to my face. This wasn't forgetfulness. This wasn't a misunderstanding. She knew what she was doing. That afternoon, I heard her in her room laughing on the phone, and it took everything in me not to march in there and explode. Instead, I decided to test her. I went back to the bathroom and placed a tiny, almost invisible piece of clear tape over the cap of one of my bottles. That way, if she opened it, the seal would break. The next morning, when I checked, the tape was gone. She'd used it again. Something inside me snapped. I waited until evening when she was eating cereal on the couch, and I sat down across from her. "Hannah," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "We need to talk again." She glanced up mid-bite. "What's up?" "I told you not to use my skincare, and you're still doing it." Her spoon froze halfway to her mouth. "What? No, I'm not." "Yes, you are," I shot back. "Don't lie to me." "I put tape on the cap, and it was broken this morning. You used it." For a moment, she just stared at me, eyes wide. Then she laughed like I was being ridiculous. "You taped your bottles? That's kind of obsessive, don't you think?" I felt my jaw clench. "I had to. Because you weren't respecting me when I asked nicely." Her smile faltered. "Okay, fine, I used some. But it's just lotion, it's not the end of the world. You're acting like I stole your rent money or something. It's not just lotion," I snapped. "It's mine. It costs a lot, and I already told you not to touch it. You're breaking my trust." She rolled her eyes, setting her bowl down with a clatter. "God, you're so dramatic. I've shared plenty of stuff with you, food, rides, even clothes sometimes. But you act like this is some federal crime." "It's not about sharing," I said firmly. "It's about boundaries. You don't get to take something of mine after I've said no." Her face hardened. "You know what? Maybe you shouldn't leave it in the bathroom then. If you don't want people to touch it, keep it in your room. Simple solution." I stared at her, stunned by her audacity. Or, and hear me out, you could just respect me. The silence that followed was thick. Hannah grabbed her bowl, muttered something under her breath, and stomped back to her room, slamming the door. I sat there, shaking with frustration. For the first time, I realized this wasn't just about skincare. It was about the kind of roommate and the kind of friend Hannah really was. And I wasn't sure I liked what I was learning. The next few days were unbearably tense. Hannah and I barely spoke to each other. When we did, it was short, clipped exchanges like, "Are you done with the bathroom?" Or, "Can you pass me the salt?" It felt like the air in the apartment was heavy with unspoken resentment. I tried to keep my stuff safe. I moved some of my most expensive products into a storage box under my bed, and I only brought them out when I needed them. But doing that every day was exhausting and made me feel like a paranoid hoarder in my own home. I shouldn't have to guard my things like state secrets just because my roommate couldn't respect boundaries. Then came the night of the party. We'd invited a few friends over for a casual Friday hangout. People brought drinks, snacks, and music, and for the first hour or so, it was actually fun. I thought maybe Hannah and I could coexist peacefully for one night without drama. But halfway through the evening, I overheard something that made my blood boil. Hannah was in the kitchen with two of her friends, giggling as she told them, "Yeah, my roommate freaked out because I used her fancy face creams. She literally put tape on the bottles. Like, who does that? Total control freak behavior." Her friends laughed. One of them said, "Oh, wow, that's extreme. It's just skincare." I stood frozen in the hallway, my drink in hand, my face burning. She wasn't just disrespecting me in private, she was making fun of me to others, making me sound like some obsessive lunatic. Before I could stop myself, I stepped into the kitchen. "You think this is funny?" I asked, my voice sharper than I meant. The room went quiet. Her friends glanced between us awkwardly. Hannah's smile faded, but she tried to play it off. "Relax, I was just joking." "No," I said firmly, my hands trembling. "You're mocking me in front of your friends after you broke my trust. That's not a joke. That's disrespect." Her friends muttered something about needing more chips and quickly slipped out of the kitchen, leaving us alone. Hannah crossed her arms. "Why are you making such a scene? You're embarrassing yourself." I laughed bitterly. "Embarrassing myself? You're the one bragging about taking something I asked you not to touch, and then mocking me when I try to set boundaries?" Her eyes narrowed. "God, you're impossible. Everyone shares stuff. It's normal. You act like you're better than everyone else just because you buy expensive products." "It's not about being better," I snapped. "It's about respect. I respect your things. I don't go into your room. I don't eat your food. I don't touch your stuff. Why can't you extend me the same courtesy?" She shrugged as if I was overreacting. "Because it's not that serious." That was the moment I lost it. I slammed my cup down on the counter and said, "You don't get to decide what's serious when it's not your stuff." "You've crossed the line, Hannah. I can't trust you. And if you can't handle basic respect, maybe we shouldn't be living together." Her eyes widened at that. For a second, I thought she'd back down. But instead, she raised her chin defiantly. "Fine. Maybe we shouldn't." We stared at each other, and the noise of the party muffled in the background, neither of us willing to be the first to break. That night, I lay awake in my room, staring at the ceiling. The truth settled heavy in my chest. Our friendship wasn't just strained, it was breaking. And I didn't know if there was a way to fix it. The morning after the party, the apartment felt like a war zone. The empty cups and chip crumbs scattered around the living room were nothing compared to the silence between Hannah and me. She avoided me completely, slamming her bedroom door when she passed by. I didn't mind the distance. Anything was better than pretending everything was fine. But the fallout started spreading faster than I expected. On Monday, when I met up with our mutual friend Claire for coffee, she gave me this half-sympathetic, half-awkward look and said, "So, what's going on with you and Hannah? She told everyone you're threatening to move out because she borrowed lotion." I nearly choked on my drink. Borrowed lotion? Is that really how she's spinning this? Claire hesitated. "Well, she said you've been super controlling lately and blowing things out of proportion. Honestly, I didn't know what to believe, but I wanted to hear your side." I explained everything. The months of her sneaking into my stuff. The wasted bottles, the ignored boundaries, the fight at the party. Claire's face slowly shifted from doubt to frustration. "Okay, yeah. That's not borrowing lotion. That's straight up disrespect." She should have known better. It felt good to have at least one person understand me, but I couldn't shake the worry. How many others only heard Hannah's version? Was I now the crazy roommate who freaked out over moisturizer? Back at the apartment, Hannah's behavior grew pettier by the day. She stopped unloading the dishwasher, let her laundry pile up until the hallway smelled musty, and forgot to take out the trash even when it was clearly her turn. It was obvious she was trying to punish me by making our living situation unbearable. The real tipping point came a week later. I came home from class and noticed one of my serums sitting on the bathroom counter, half empty. My heart dropped. I knew I hadn't left it out. I'd been keeping everything in the box under my bed. That meant Hannah had gone into my room. My hands shook with anger as I knocked on her door. When she opened it, I held up the bottle. "Did you seriously go into my room to take this?" She rolled her eyes. "Oh my God, stop acting like I robbed a bank. I just needed a little and your door wasn't locked." I was stunned. "So that makes it okay to go through my things?" "Hannah, this is insane." "Insane is hiding your creams like they're gold bars," she snapped back. That's when I realized this wasn't about skincare anymore. It was about boundaries, or more accurately, her complete refusal to accept them. That night, I texted Claire again and asked if she'd be willing to let me crash at her place for a few days. I needed space to think. Hannah clearly had no intention of respecting me, and I couldn't keep living like a prisoner in my own apartment. As I packed a small bag, I looked around my room and felt both relief and sadness. This place was supposed to feel like home, but now it was just a battlefield, and the war wasn't over yet. Staying at Claire's apartment for a few days felt like breathing fresh air after being stuck in a smoky room. Her place was small, cluttered, and her cat shed all over the couch, but it was peaceful. Nobody touched my things. Nobody rolled their eyes when I asked for basic respect. For the first time in weeks, I actually slept well. But being away from the apartment also made me realize how bad things had gotten with Hannah. Every text from her was short and passive-aggressive. "Don't forget rent is due," or "Your mail is on the counter. Not my problem if it gets lost." She didn't apologize, didn't ask where I was, didn't even pretend to care. That silence said more than words. By midweek, I knew I couldn't go back to living with her long-term. Even if she miraculously stopped stealing my skincare, the trust was gone. So, I called our landlord. "Hi, I have kind of a tricky situation," I started nervously. "What happens if I want to end my part of the lease early?" He sighed, like he'd dealt with this 100 times before. "Technically, both tenants are responsible until the lease is up. If you leave, you'd still have to pay unless someone else takes over your portion." I hung up feeling both frustrated and trapped. The lease had 6 months left. 6 months of walking on eggshells, hiding my belongings, and being painted as the villain to our friend group. The thought made my chest tighten. That evening, I went back to the apartment just to grab more clothes. Hannah was in the living room watching TV, legs crossed on the couch like she owned the place. She barely looked up when I walked in. "Back from your little vacation?" she asked with fake sweetness. "Just picking up my stuff," I muttered. I didn't want to argue. But of course, she couldn't resist. "You know, everyone thinks you're being ridiculous. It's just skincare. You're acting like I'm some kind of thief." I froze. "You are a thief, Hannah. You went into my room without permission. Do you understand how violating that is?" She scoffed. "Drama, drama, drama. You're impossible to live with." I wanted to scream, but I held it in. Instead, I zipped up my duffel bag and walked out, ignoring the satisfaction I knew she felt in pushing me away. At Claire's, I started browsing rental listings late into the night. Most were either way out of my budget or located miles from campus. But the act of searching gave me a sense of control. I wasn't trapped, not forever at least. Still, I had to figure out how to survive until then. Avoiding Hannah completely wasn't realistic, but confrontation wasn't working either. The tension had boiled over so badly that every interaction felt like walking into a minefield. The worst part was the rumors. A friend from class casually mentioned, "Hannah said you're moving out because you can't handle sharing a bathroom. Is that true?" I wanted to scream that the truth was so much uglier, but I bit my tongue. Explaining everything to every person felt exhausting. It was clear Hannah was trying to poison the well, and I couldn't fight her gossip with silence forever. That's when the thought first crossed my mind. Maybe I needed to collect proof. If she was going to keep twisting the story, maybe it was time I showed people what was really happening behind closed doors. The more I thought about it, the more obvious it became. If Hannah was determined to paint me as the villain, I needed to be ready to defend myself. I wasn't interested in drama, but I was done letting her control the narrative. So I bought a small lockbox for my skincare and valuables, just in case she tried to snoop again. But I also bought something else, a tiny motion-activated camera that could be placed discreetly on my dresser. Not because I wanted to spy, but because I needed proof in case things escalated. Claire raised an eyebrow when I told her. "That's a bold move," she said. "I don't want to use it unless I have to," I admitted. "But I'm tired of feeling powerless. If she goes through my stuff again, at least I'll have evidence." The next time I went back to the apartment, Hannah wasn't there. I set up the camera and placed a couple of bottles of skincare back on the dresser. Nothing I couldn't replace, but enough to test her temptation. Then I left for class. When I returned that evening, Hannah was lounging in the living room with her phone. She glanced at me, expression neutral, and said nothing. My heart hammered as I went into my room and checked the footage. Sure enough, around 2:15 p.m., Hannah had opened my door, walked straight to the dresser, and picked up one of the bottles. She examined it for a few seconds, put it down, and then rummaged through my drawer before leaving. She hadn't taken anything this time, but she'd confirmed exactly what I suspected. She thought she had free rein over my belongings. I sat on my bed, both furious and relieved. Furious because she had no respect for me. Relieved because I finally had proof. But proof wasn't enough. I needed to figure out what to do with it. Part of me wanted to confront her immediately, to shove my phone in her face and yell, "Look, this is who you really are." But I knew that would only escalate things. Hannah would deny it, twist it, somehow make me look like the crazy one for installing a camera. So, instead, I quietly backed up the footage, saved it to a cloud drive, and waited. The following days were icy. Hannah barely spoke to me, and when she did, it was laced with sarcasm. "Don't worry, I didn't touch your precious products," she'd mutter, loud enough to sting. I ignored her. Meanwhile, I doubled down on my apartment search. A studio popped up online that was tiny, overpriced, and halfway across town. But it was mine alone. No Hannah, no sneaking, no stolen skincare. I applied immediately. Still, I couldn't shake the dread of the coming weeks. Rent wasn't due yet, but when it was, I knew another showdown was inevitable. She'd keep pushing, keep trying to provoke me. Maybe even worse now that she sensed I was slipping away from her control. So I made myself a promise. If Hannah crossed one more line, if she stole again, if she badmouthed me to my face, if she tried to sabotage my things, I'd use the footage. Not out of pettiness, but because I refused to be gaslit into silence anymore. And deep down, I had a feeling that moment was coming sooner than I thought. The breaking point came on a Saturday morning, one of those rare weekends when I had nothing planned. I woke up late, stretched, and thought maybe, just maybe, I'd have a peaceful day. But peace and Hannah had never gone hand in hand. I shuffled into the kitchen, still in my pajamas, and stopped dead in my tracks. There on the counter was one of my locked-away skincare bottles, its cap missing, the creamy product smeared across a dirty towel. For a moment, I just stared, my mind struggling to process it. I had kept everything in a lockbox, the key tucked into my backpack. How had she even gotten it out? Then it clicked. My backpack was in my room, zipped up but clearly not secure. She must have gone through it, found the key, and helped herself. My chest burned with a mix of rage and disbelief. It wasn't even about the skincare anymore. It was about the invasion of trust, the entitlement, the sheer disrespect. I stormed back to my room and checked the camera footage. Sure enough, there she was, entering my room while I was asleep, rummaging through my bag and unlocking the box. She didn't even hesitate, like it was her God-given right. My hands shook as I watched. Enough was enough. I marched straight to her room, threw the door open, and held up my phone. "Do you want to explain this?" Hannah looked up lazily from her laptop. "What?" I hit play on the video, the sound of the lockbox snapping open filling the room. Her face paled. That's illegal, she stammered, pointing at the phone. You can't record me without telling me. What's illegal, I snapped, is breaking into my stuff and stealing from me. I told you to stop. I asked you nicely. I locked everything up. And you still think you're entitled to my things? Do you hear yourself? Hannah's voice rose defensively. It's just lotion. You act like I stole your entire paycheck. God, you're so dramatic. No, I said, my voice shaking but steady. It's about respect. And you clearly have none for me. I'm done, Hannah. Absolutely done. I turned and left her gaping in the doorway, locking myself in my room. My heart hammered against my ribs, but I felt lighter than I had in weeks. A few hours later, I got a barrage of texts from her. You're seriously going to ruin our friendship over this? I can't believe you'd spy on me like that. If you show anyone that video, I'll tell everyone how controlling you are. I didn't respond. I forwarded the footage to myself, then emailed it to Claire for safekeeping. If Hannah wanted to play dirty, I was ready. That night, she slammed cabinets in the kitchen, stomped down the hallway, and muttered insults under her breath. But I refused to engage. I had made my decision. I wasn't just going to move out. I was going to make sure Hannah couldn't twist this around to make me look like the villain. The lease renewal deadline was coming up in 3 weeks. I had my evidence, my plan, and a new apartment application in progress. Hannah thought she had the upper hand, but she had no idea that this time I was one step ahead. The countdown to freedom had officially begun. As the lease renewal deadline loomed closer, the tension in our apartment reached suffocating levels. Hannah still tried to act like nothing was wrong when other people were around, but in private, she was passive-aggressive, slamming doors and, accidentally, leaving dirty dishes in my sink just to get a reaction. I ignored it all. My focus was on one thing: getting out clean, with my deposit intact, and leaving her no room to spin a false story about me being the problem. I had already spoken to our landlord, Mrs. Larson, who was kind but firm about paperwork. She reminded me that both tenants had to agree to renew, or else she'd draft a new lease with whoever wanted to stay. Perfect. I told her quietly that I did not want to renew, and that I would be moving out at the end of the term. That set the stage. A few days later, Hannah cornered me in the living room. So, about the lease, she began, twirling her hair like it was a casual conversation. You're renewing, right? I don't feel like going through the whole roommate search thing again. I met her gaze steadily. No, I'm not. I already told Mrs. Larson. I'm moving out. Her smile froze. Wait, what? You didn't even discuss it with me? I don't need your permission to leave, I said flatly. Her face darkened and she raised her voice. You're just going to abandon me? Do you know how hard it is to find a roommate mid-year? That's so selfish. I almost laughed. The irony was me, selfish. After she'd stolen from me, lied to me, and disrespected every boundary I'd set. I kept my voice calm, though. Hannah, I'm not abandoning you. I'm making a choice for my own well-being. You've made this living situation unbearable. Her eyes narrowed. Is this about the stupid skincare again? I pulled out my phone and played the video one more time. She flinched, her bravado faltering. It's not just about the skincare, I said. It's about trust. You broke it repeatedly. I'm not going to live with someone who thinks it's okay to sneak into my room while I'm sleeping. She crossed her arms, defensive. Fine, go. But don't expect me to cover your half of the rent until Mrs. Larson finds someone else. That's on you. That's when I dropped the bomb. Actually, I already spoke to Mrs. Larson. She's drafting a new lease for you if you want to stay, and I'll be officially released. So, no, Hannah, you won't get a dime from me after I move out. Her jaw clenched. She muttered something under her breath and stormed off, slamming her bedroom door so hard a picture fell off the wall. That night, I heard her pacing and ranting to someone on the phone, probably trying to spin the story about me being controlling and paranoid. But it didn't matter anymore. My exit plan was secure. I started packing little by little, boxing up my things and moving valuables to my car, just in case. Each item I packed felt like a piece of my sanity being reclaimed. Of course, Hannah didn't make it easy. She accidentally unplugged the Wi-Fi while I was working, forgot to take out her trash until the apartment reeked, and once even left a passive-aggressive sticky note on my mirror. Hope you're happy ruining our friendship. But her games didn't faze me. For once, I had the upper hand. The final showdown would come on moving day. I knew Hannah well enough to know she wouldn't let me leave quietly. She thrived on drama, and if she couldn't manipulate me into staying, she'd try to make my exit as messy as possible. I wasn't going to let her win. The morning of my move felt surreal. My boxes were stacked neatly by the door, my bed was dismantled, and the apartment looked emptier than it had in months. It should have felt like relief, and it did. But I couldn't shake the anticipation of Hannah's final act. She wasn't the type to let someone walk away without drama. Sure enough, when the movers arrived, Hannah suddenly appeared from her room, arms crossed, blocking the hallway. "So that's it? You're really leaving me with all this?" she demanded, gesturing vaguely at the apartment. "All what? Your stuff?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "Yes, Hannah. That's how moving out works. I take my things, you take yours," she scoffed. "You're acting like I'm the villain here, all because of a couple drops of lotion." That word lotion ignited something in me. I turned fully to face her. It wasn't a couple drops, Hannah. It was hundreds of dollars of products. It was breaking into my room while I slept. It was lying to my face when I caught you. It was treating me like my boundaries didn't matter. My voice was steady, but my chest was tight with years of pent-up frustration. Her lips curled. "You're so dramatic. No wonder you don't have any real friends." The movers exchanged an awkward glance, but I didn't flinch. Instead, I smiled. "You know what? Say whatever you want. In 10 minutes, I'll be gone, and I'll never have to deal with you again." That hit her. She faltered, her bravado slipping into something desperate. "You're just going to walk away? After everything we've been through as roommates?" I gave her one last, long look. Exactly. The movers carried the boxes past her, and she had no choice but to step aside. She muttered under her breath, but I didn't care enough to listen. I signed the final paperwork with Mrs. Larson, who came by to check the apartment. She inspected my room, nodded, and confirmed I'd get my portion of the deposit back. Hannah scowled but didn't argue. As I loaded the last box into my car, Hannah appeared one final time, standing on the porch. "You'll regret this," she called out. I didn't bother turning around. "No, Hannah," I said over my shoulder. "I regret ever letting you into my life." Then I shut the car door and drove away. The sense of freedom was immediate, like stepping out of a cage. I moved into a small studio not far from campus. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine, peaceful, safe, and free of Hannah's toxic energy. In the weeks that followed, she tried to stir up gossip through mutual acquaintances, spinning stories about me being a psycho over skincare. But the thing about lying is, eventually people noticed the cracks. I had my receipts, my video, and my calm responses while she had nothing but dramatics. Slowly, people stopped taking her seriously. And me? I thrived. My skin actually improved once I wasn't stressing over whether my moisturizer would mysteriously disappear overnight. I reconnected with friends I'd neglected, and I learned one of the most important lessons of my early adulthood. Protecting your boundaries isn't selfish. It's survival. Sometimes I wonder if Hannah ever looks back and realizes she drove me away. But honestly, it doesn't matter. I don't need her apologies or explanations, because the truth is, walking away was the best skincare investment I ever made.